What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be talking about Aurora Cannabis. We have Aurora Cannabis earnings coming up later this week. So we're going to be looking at Aurora Cannabis and we're going to try to determine whether Aurora is a good buy before their earnings. Also, we'll be catching you guys up on the latest news with Aurora Cannabis. But before we get this video started, don't forget, give me a thumbs up, hit that notification bell, smash that subscribe button, and let's get this video started. So at first we're going to be looking at Aurora Cannabis charts. We're going to be looking at the 1 hour charts. And right now, looking at these charts, it looks like Aurora Cannabis might finally break above this resistance line. This was the resistance, the downtrending resistance line that we've drawn in for quite some time. And if you look at Aurora Cannabis, you can see that Aurora has consistently traded in between these two lines, the red support line and the green resistance line. And right now, if we extend this down, it looks like Aurora Cannabis has went slightly above it, immediately got rejected. We also have a resistance line right here at around $8 Canadian. So I'm going to extend that all the way here. And the same thing happened. Aurora Cannabis somewhat broke up above it this morning and immediately got rejected. So we have two resistance lines right now. We have the resistance line right here at $8, and we have this downtrending resistance line. And Aurora Cannabis seems to want to break above it. Maybe once earnings come out, which we will get into the earnings later on in this video, maybe we might see Aurora Cannabis break above both these lines. And we still have the support here at around $7. This was the buying opportunity I was waiting for, and it might not look like I'm going to get that buying opportunity unless Aurora announces disappointing earnings. But according to Aurora, that's not going to happen. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to be looking at American charts just to give you guys the American prices. So right now we have Aurora Cannabis sitting at $6.02 American. The same thing, we have the resistance line right here. Aurora Cannabis broke a little bit above it, immediately got rejected. Here, this is a buy for me because I have no position in Aurora Cannabis. A $6 resistance line for Aurora Cannabis broke above it, went a little bit below it. Right now, Aurora is in the buy territory for me in American dollars, but I'm not going to be starting a position. I still want it to go a little lower. It's not guaranteed to happen, but I would love if Aurora went down to $5 Canadian. Would be an amazing American. That would be an amazing buying opportunity for me. As of now, Aurora Cannabis is still downtrending unless we see them break above this $6 American resistance line and this green downtrending resistance line as well. Right now, Aurora Cannabis is currently down 1.07%. We're going to go straight to the news, which is, should investors buy Aurora stock before it releases year-end results? So Aurora Cannabis is expected to release its year-end results later this week. The company has lost more than 20% of its value in just the past 3 months, so a strong finish to the fiscal year could help send the stock back up. So we're going to take a closer look at Aurora Cannabis. So Aurora Cannabis is expecting big sales growth. In August, Aurora gave investors an update on its operations in which it stated that based on preliminary and unaudited results, it expected sales of Q4 to come in between 100 million to 107 million Canadian dollars. Now, I did do a video on this, and I also spoke about how I thought this was a bad move by Aurora Cannabis, because now investors expect Aurora to release more than 100 million sales. And if they go anywhere below that, or even if they hit the bottom half of those sales, I think investors will not be very happy. But we're going to go continue in this article. That's more than 5 times what the company generated a year ago, back when the adult use market in Canada hadn't yet opened for business. Those are some impressive sales numbers, and they would be even higher than what rival Canopy Growth was able to generate in its latest results when it posted revenues of 90.5 million. So as good as those sales numbers would be for Aurora, the problem is that this isn't new information anymore. When the company released the update on August 6th, the stock has had a big boost, climbing to as high as $7.20 that day. Effectively, those sales are now priced into the stock, and they're going to be the benchmark for analysts. Sales landing in the lower end of that range could have a negative impact on the stock, and sales would likely need to finish near the top end of the range for the share price to benefit from the impressive growth. So that's exactly what I'm talking about right now. I've read different articles where they said they can release between 100 to 109 million. In this article, they're saying 100 to 107 million. But now they set the bar really high to the point where investors are expecting high numbers. And now, after that news, Aurora Cannabis shares did climb up. So now, according to this article, they're saying that the prices are already baked in according to those sales revenues. So they're also saying that if Aurora Cannabis does release between 100 to 102, 103 million, investors will be disappointed because that will be in the lower end of that estimate. And the only way Aurora Cannabis's shares can shoot up is if they reach the top half of those estimates, which would be near 105 to 107 million or even more. If Aurora releases $110 million in sales, then that would be amazing. We would definitely see Aurora Cannabis shares shoot up almost immediately. But I think anything below 100 million, that would be extremely disappointing. I would expect a sell-off, especially if Aurora Cannabis does do less than $100 million in sales, or even anything less than 103 million. So now the bottom line will likely make the difference. The number that investors will be looking for in Q4 is the company's net income and whether it can follow up competitors Afria's impressive results. Unfortunately, that might be a long shot. At best, Aurora this quarter, coming off a loss of 158 million in Q3, the company has posted an operating loss of more than 74 million in each of the past 3 quarters. Last quarter, Aurora came in well below estimates, and analysts aren't expecting the company to turn a profit this time around. So takeaway for investors: barring a big announcement in the year-end report, the odds are that Aurora won't get a big bump in price, even if it does fall within the range of sales that it forecasted last month. The saving grace for the stock could be that since it is already near its low for 2019, a large drop in price now might be unlikely. However, given the industry's track record of disappointing investors and analysts, it might be a safer idea to wait until after the company releases its earnings to make a purchase decision. There's simply no compelling reason to buy the stock any earlier. So according to this article, they're saying it's not really the best bet right now to buy Aurora Cannabis before earnings. Unfortunately, I never picked up any Aurora Cannabis. I was very close to picking some up when it went below $7.20. Unfortunately, I slept in. I'm just the type of investor that doesn't like to buy shares unless I am averaging down. I don't want to average up in my Aurora position, so I will not be picking up any Aurora shares unless it goes below 720, which is the position I have right now in Aurora. And if you're not a shareholder in Aurora, what's the worst that could happen? If you picked up some Aurora shares, Aurora would drop down. If you still have cash, then you can average down. But according to this article, they're saying it's not a safe bet. I did mention last time we spoke about these estimates that Aurora Cannabis should have underestimated themselves instead of giving such a high number, because now we're already expecting big numbers this quarter. If they shot the bar a little lower, maybe they announced 95 million and then they actually released 103 million in sales, investors would be very happy and the stock price would probably go up. So now the fact that Aurora set the bar really high, it's really on them whether they go on the lower end or on the higher end of those estimates. So now I'm going to move on to the next article, which is even though Aurora Cannabis has a future, lay off ACB stock for now. So Aurora Cannabis is not having a good year. After shooting up nearly 80% in the first 2.5 months of 2019, the ACB stock price has fallen dramatically. And I think at one point Aurora Cannabis was also up 100% on the year. And of course, we've seen a sell-off ever since. So cannabis stocks are down across the board. This year hasn't quite worked out the way the large Canadian cannabis producers had imagined. Regulatory approval through Health Canada has taken longer than expected. This caused the market to be oversupplied. This is not good news for Aurora, who along with Canopy is one of the largest producers in Canada. Then in July, news broke out with CannTrust growing marijuana in unlicensed rooms, and this was not an Aurora problem. However, that also spooked investors. Also, fundamentals are taking control of the frenzy. As the cannabis bubble began to inflate, Aurora did what many leaders in emerging markets would do. They issued more shares. This was a reasonable course of action, particularly as the cannabis market entered the growth through acquisition state. But as the number of outstanding shares went through the roof, analysts started to balk at the serious dilution that was happening with Aurora stock. Analysts also sounded the alarm about Aurora Cannabis being used to finance the company's current and future acquisition. In 2018, Aurora Cannabis completed acquisition of Canamed Therapeutics and MedRelief. More acquisitions spell higher volatility and further stock dilution, all of which means investors may be waiting a while to see a return on their investment. On top of that, regulation and legalization are still obstacles. We have one more obstacle to deal with, which is October 17th when CBD and edibles become legal, but apparently they're not going to be allowed to sell until December 17th, and that's not even guaranteed because we've seen the Canadian government change these dates in the past, so I won't be surprised to see it happen again in the future, but I'm hoping it doesn't happen. So what's next for Aurora Cannabis stock? Cult stocks like Tesla seem to be able to get away with failing to deliver on spurious projections. However, investors seem to hold Aurora to a higher standard, but it is sounding more and more like investors are punishing ACB stock for for not being able to save them from themselves. Anyone investing in Aurora has to understand that this is a growing company in an emerging and volatile market. I wouldn't buy ACB right now. It seems like no matter what happens when it reports its earnings later this month that it has further to fall, but I'm still bullish on the long-term potential for Aurora Cannabis stock, particularly once investors' expectations start matching up with the reality and the potential of the stock. So also, according to this article, in the short term, it's not a good purchase. It's not a good time to purchase Aurora. In the long term investors will benefit from this investment into this company. All very good points. I can't agree or disagree. Right now I'm holding on to my small position. I haven't purchased yet. I do have prices that I'm looking at to purchase. If I get those prices, I will be purchasing. If I don't, I'm happy with the position I had. I've already made over $10,000 off Aurora Cannabis, so I am not in a rush to purchase this company or to dive in it until I get the price that I like. But that's it for Aurora Cannabis. So far from these two articles, they're both saying it's not a good time to purchase Aurora Cannabis. I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't tell anyone what to do, but if I personally didn't have any shares in Aurora Cannabis, I would look at these prices as a great starting position. In the sevens, in the low sevens, I think it's a great starting position in Canadian for Aurora Cannabis, mostly because you also have the opportunity to average down. So even right now, I have a very small position in Aurora Cannabis, and I would love to have that opportunity to average down. If not, I'm happy with my small position. Aurora Cannabis is one of my plays in the cannabis sector. I also have a lot of investments in many other companies. Of course, I love Aurora. They've been my favorite company. They're the company I almost make a video about every week. So I definitely think if I would have zero shares in Aurora Cannabis, I would most likely be starting a position now, but it would be a very small position, a position that I'd be prepared to average down just in case worst case scenario does happen. But anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget, give me a thumbs up, hit that notification if you're not subscribed yet, and smash that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys on... Actually, before we go, let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think is going to happen with Aurora Cannabis earnings? Do you think they're going to be hitting the high end of those estimates or the low end? You think share prices are going to drop? They're going to go up? Let me know. But that's it for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye bye.